I am really nervous because today I'm going to the scholar Dan Wallace's personal home and interviewing him in his library. It's more of just like hanging out in his library, but I'm nervous because I really have two main objectives. I want him to know how much this truly means to me and our community that he let us into his library. And two, I want to bless him back some way. And I have no idea how I'm possibly going to do that. But first, let's just go. That I have like 4 different learning outcomes that we really need to learn. Like in the world of Bible translations, we really need to know about 4 things. First one is definitely P52. Say bye goats, I'll be back. Now, the reason why P52 is on the list is because this is the oldest or earliest papyri fragment of the New Testament, which testifies to its reliability. And this is just something I think all Christians should know about, especially in Dan's line of work. But first, if you don't know who Dan Wallace is, he's not just a Bible translator or scholar or seminary professor. But I don't know how to explain it either because so many people don't know about the world of textual criticism. To understand who Dan is, you need to know about textual criticism. Textual criticism is a little bit of the world of biblical scholarship that studies the fragments, the papyri, and their differences. Everybody always fears the reliability of scripture and says it has been changed over thousands of years by man or translations. But what textual critics do is they go back to the original sources, so back to the original fragments of papyri, and they study any differences that they might be, and they actually have a coding system based on how like severe the difference is and make sure that we have the most accurate, historical, true scriptures that we have today. This is what Dan Wallace does. Dan Wallace is like the guy for New Testament textual criticism. He also taught at Dallas Theological Seminary and just retired. And he is the executive director of the Center for the Study of New Testament Manuscripts, which we call CSNTM. So basically, he is like the guy for New Testament Greek manuscripts and for the study of the reliability of scripture. He oversaw the translation of the New Testament for the Net Bible, which is a newer publication, and it translates from the original languages and came from multiple different denominations and is revolutionary and known for its notes. They have a full notes edition that shares all the textual like translation issues and why they make certain decisions that they make. Dan is iconic for speaking against atheists like Bart Ehrman who attack the reliability of scripture and is overall the coolest, most humblest guy I will ever know, and I have no reason why he even tolerates me. And if you stay to the end of this video, you'll hear how you can hang with him as well and possibly win a free signed by Dan copy of the Net Bible. And friends, that is whose home library we're going to today.
Hey Bible nerds, welcome to my library.
Now, for obvious reasons, he asked that I didn't show his house, but his library is incredible, and we immediately got talking about what is above his mantle.
Here's the beginning of, close to the beginning stages of the printing of the Bible in a modern language. Right behind you, those are original leaves from a 1611 King James Bible. The King James Bible was published in May 1611. The King James Bible was supposed to be a revision of the Bishop's Bible that had come out earlier. King James I of England, he was dealing with factions within the Protestant church, which was those who were more high church Anglican, and then the Puritans, many of whom left for America. The Puritans used Geneva Bible. Geneva Bible was done in 1560 in Geneva when Mary was Queen of England, nicknamed Bloody Mary, which was well-deserved because she just kind of had as a little avocation killing Protestants. And so they moved to Geneva, these scholars, and with Calvin's help, they were able to produce this terrific translation in 1560. And they would send it over to England because it was illegal. But what they had were an awful lot of side notes, marginalia. King James says no marginal notes except where absolutely necessary to show the differences in translation. And like in Exodus 1:19 where it said the Hebrew midwives were saying that they couldn't kill the babies when they were born. They said they're coming out so fast, we can't even get to it. So they lied to the king. And then there's this note that says something to the effect of, you must always obey God over the king. Well, it didn't say Pharaoh, it said king. So there was kind of some digs here and there. And so he didn't want the Geneva Bible. But it was such a fine translation that in the preface to the King James Bible, they quoted from Scripture, I think it was 18, 19 times, and every time was from the Geneva Bible that these King James translators quoted. And King James said, the Geneva Bible you may not use at all. Well, the King James was really a revision of the Geneva Bible. He just didn't realize that. So this was the largest one. This did not supersede the Geneva Bible for 50 years. That was still the standard Bible that the English were using, even though it was illegal. So when this came out, 1611, 50 years later, finally by 1661, it now was more popular than the Geneva. So it wasn't an immediate success, but to get 2 leaves of an original King James was pretty significant. And it's a little bit tricky to say I have a first edition King James, because in a sense there is no first edition. They were printing very signatures, quires, where you have 8 leaves that are bound together and sewn into the binding. That's called a quire. So that we still do that today. In hardbound books you can see the back of it where the threads go through. If you can see an old book, you see those threads. Never paperback books, they're glued in. These quires, 8 leaves, which actually started in the 3rd century AD, is when that started to be used. It's amazing to think about. But they mixed the quires up at one point while they were trying to get the second printing done while the first printing was still being done. And there were a few minor changes. I think the major one was in Ruth 4:15. It either says he or she. Both are translations of different Hebrew words. And so people say, do you have a he Bible or a she Bible?
Yeah.
The he Bible, I think, is considered really the first printing more purely, and the she Bible different. So it's a mess. Right from the beginning, it's a mess.
Yeah.
And it takes 50 years for it to become the one that is really used. But what's interesting about the King James Bible also is you can see in the margins there's some notes. In the original, they had 8,000 notes. Either translation notes or sometimes even talking about textual variants. And the text, either the text or the translation would say something like, here's another way to read this. This is what other witnesses have. Something really minor like that, but they don't really discuss it. But the King James also had the Apocrypha in it. It's a Protestant Bible with the Apocrypha. The Apocrypha, in all Protestant Bibles, has been put between the Old and New Testament rather than intermingled in the Old Testament the way Catholic Bibles have it. The Apocrypha was printed with every single King James Bible until the 1830s, when you could finally get an option of getting it without the Apocrypha. So, we tend to say, well, this is Protestant Bible, they didn't have the, well, that's not true. And here, the funny thing is the King James only people, you say, well, it had the Apocrypha, and they're always anti-Catholic. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that? Mm-hmm. It's a fun little quiz form.
Now, friends, it was around this point of him talking that I noticed something in the corner of his mantle, which made me think I might be able to achieve my learning objective number 1, talking to him about P52, because is that a copy of it right there on his mantle?
That's a piece of papyrus that is a duplicate of P52. Same size, same text and all that, which is, as far as we know, the oldest fragment of the New Testament yet discovered. The original person who discovered it had come from Egypt. These manuscripts came to a lot of these different universities in Europe. This fellow, C.H. Roberts, was working at University of Manchester in England. And it came in a shoebox of scraps of papyrus from his predecessor. But C.H. Roberts gets this shoebox, opens it up, and he sees this little fragment of papyrus. And he was a papyrologist. He was a newly minted doctorate. He's looking at this thing. He says, oh my gosh, handwriting is very early. And it's professional, which meant that it was done by a real scribe. And the remarkable thing is he flipped it over, and there was handwriting on that too. And he read it, and he said, oh, this side, John 18, verses 31 through 33, parts of it, of course. And the back side, John 18, verses 37 and 38. What that told him is that this manuscript was not a roll or a scroll. Because if you write on the backside, maybe you can get through John 10 or 11, and then the backside is going to be going in the opposite direction. So it's not going to match. Having it the same verse, chapter 18, told him this was a codex. The codex form, our modern book that's bound on one side, cut pages, you flip through and you could find things quickly, was invented probably in the mid-1st century, we're not exactly sure. When it actually became used for books, it was Christians who popularized it. And in the first 500 years AD, after Christ, 94% of all Christian manuscripts were written on a codex. For the rest of the world, the evidence we have says less than 15%. So for the first and probably the only time in the history of the church, we were ahead of the technological curve. So welcome, world, to the modern book that Christians really popularized. And that is the earliest example of it.
That's so cool. That was like perfect.
Now you guys know I have my learning objectives, but I also have my like actual objectives. I've used that word too many times, but I want to thank him and I want to bless him back.
He's literally welcoming us into his private home library. This is absurd and unheard of.
So that is when I pulled out the people pleaser card and I decided to butter him up and try and make it clear just how much I appreciate this. They're just going to be drooling at anything that you can show. So it's
That was perfect.
You can use whatever you want out of that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that was great.
Hopefully he realizes, despite my faulty attempts at complimenting him, just how much this means to me. But I will not give up on my second objective, which is to bless him back. There's got to be something we can do, which leads me to look at the ministry of CSNTM itself.
Now, CSNTM digitizes or takes pictures of these ancient manuscripts before they deteriorate, digitizing, preserving them for the next generation so that we can better study and compare them.
CSNTM, the Center for the Study of New Testament Manuscripts, has been in existence for 22 years, and we have gone all over the world to find manuscripts of the New Testament, handwritten, unique manuscripts of the New Testament, most of them written in Greek, and the New Testament has far more copies than anything else from the Greco-Roman world. Homer comes in second place, and he's got about 10% of the copies that we do for the New Testament. And he had a 900-year head start. We have over 5,700 manuscripts of the Greek New Testament in existence that we know about. CSNTM, we were state-of-the-art at the very beginning with a 4-megapixel, $1,000 camera, and it got really expensive. We've been doing this 22 years. I've been to 39 countries. We've gone on about 60 expeditions to various places. There are Greek New Testament manuscripts in over 250 sites in the world. And at some of these sites, like say the city of Athens, there may be, I think there's at least a dozen museums or universities or libraries that have manuscripts, and we've photographed 5 of them so far. 6. Think of all the places we have to go to shoot those. And we will go into some of the most dangerous areas of the world. We have been in some of these areas. I've walked into tear gas before. I was rerouted every single day in a taxi to the library we were working at. At one library, there during the nighttime, people were throwing Molotov cocktails at it. We've been in places where the only way to get there is on a dirt road. Some of these monasteries and out-of-the-way places, dangerous countries. But to us, what matters is getting complete archival copies of those manuscripts. Now here's the thing. This whole science of textual criticism puts together what that original text is. And that is our ultimate goal. Get all these manuscripts digitized so we can have as full a database of all the extant manuscripts and what they say in one place. That's why I started CSNTM in the first place.
So friends, I need your help to reach that second objective, to bless him back. Help me by supporting CSNTM through the link in the description box and at the end of this video.
When you sign up to support CSNTM, you'll get access to live events to hang with Dan Wallace. If you live in the US or Canada, you'll get a free copy of the book, Putting Jesus in His Place, mailed to you. Free admission to CSNTM events and access to CSNTM news and educational publications.
If you sign up to support CSNTM in any way before March 1st, 2025, you'll be entered to win one of 4 Net Bibles signed by Dan Wallace himself that I will mail to you as a thank you for helping me achieve my objective of blessing Dan back. But if you would like to hear about my learning objectives, what else I want to learn from Dan, you're gonna have to come back for episode 2 next week. So make sure you're subscribed. I really want to hear about how this affects our personal Bible studies and what resources he uses. So make sure not to miss that episode and click here to support CSNTM and help me reach my objective of blessing him back in the ministry.
We would really love to partner with you right here.